Warhammer video games are a interesting mix. They're like movie tie-in games. Here and there you'll get something good, but most of the time they're average at best. Now previously we've had great games like the first two Dawn of War games, and we don't talk about Dawn of War 3, and Space Marine, a third-person action shooter that surprised a lot of people, myself included. Now, we've got a game that merges Titanfall 2 and Doom Eternal's fast-paced gameplay in the world of Warhammer in Necromunda, Hired Gun. But is Hired Gun a standout, or does it go into the pile of shame like so many titles before it? Now before I get into the game, if you're not familiar on what Necromunda is, it's a Warhammer game, but it's not big scales like Warhammer 40,000 and Age of Sigmar. Necromunda is a skirmish tabletop wargame where instead of Space Marines and Orcs and Tau and other armies, you'll control rival gangs in a place of anarchy below a city called Hive City. So if you're expecting Space Marines ripping Chaos Demons in half, you won't get that here, but there is a puppy and I'll get to that soon. Warhammer Necromunda Hired Gun, which I refer to now as just Hired Gun, is a first-person shooter that echoes Titanfall 2, Doom Eternal, and personally I get a bit of Wolfenstein vibes from it as well. You play as a bounty hunter where you'll start off by choosing what your character looks like, but there's no real customization options like we got in, say, the Mass Effect series. Basically, you just choose a face and style for the character, and that's it. But as you can see, I went with the Lord Raiden Yoshimitsu crossover look.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Anyways, you'll start off the prologue where you and two other bounty hunters get double-crossed and you're the only survivor. And honestly, from here on, I had no idea what the rest of the story is, and I'm completely fine with that. The way Hired Gun delivers its story is painful, and I'll get to that in just a second. Gameplay, well, if you couldn't guess by Titanfall and Doom, obviously it's a first-person shooter inspired by those games set in the Warhammer universe, where you'll face off against gangsters, robots, and monsters from the Warhammer universe. You'll have your standard mechanics of aiming and shooting and jumping, but there's also a grappling hook which is very similar to that of the meat hook from Doom Eternal, but obviously it isn't attached to a weapon. You'll also be able to double jump and dash around, and the level design is similar to that of Doom as well. Look, honestly, it's basically Doom Eternal with a bit of a Warhammer skin over the top of it. There's also a bit of a looter shooter mechanic in from the Borderlands series and Hired Gun 2, as you'll find treasure chests throughout each level that will have legendary, rare, and epic weapon variants inside. If you're a fan of the Warhammer 40k universe, then some weapons will be very familiar. There's of course the las guns from the Imperial Guard, bolters and heavy bolters, plasma weapons and staples like sawn-off shotguns and revolvers. You'll also be able to upgrade and personalize each weapon your own way too, which I will say I loved about Hired Gun. At the start of my playthrough with Hired Gun, I'd found a sawn-off shotgun that fired armor-penetrating rounds rather than traditional slug shotgun rounds, and I'd kept that weapon throughout the entire time of Hired Gun. You can even rename weapons too, and all of my weapons had a Warhammer theme to their names as well. You'll be able to change the stocks, the barrels, the muzzles, the magazine clips, the scopes, and even have charms hanging off the side of your weapons, which will then give you bonuses like critical hit points or increasing the chance of better loot. Good thing too is every weapon in this game can be upgraded and customized in all of these ways as well. Now, one of the main selling points for Hired Gun is your companion, a mastiff, who is a good boy or a good girl before turning into the stuff for fucking nightmares. Your mastiff can be called into battle at any time by pressing the relevant button. Your character will pull out a squeaky toy which will then summon your mastiff. Now the mastiff will hang around and attack enemy units at your command, and while also highlighting to you any other enemies located around you on the map. A little bit like how the dog worked in Metal Gear Solid 5. Anyways, you'll summon your mastiff, they'll attack units, but you'll need to tell the mastiff to do so. Now he or she won't stay out forever, they'll only stay out for a limited time. Now they'll have a timer underneath their health bar, which is this green bar, and when that reaches 0 they'll disappear into a cloud of nothing, or when their health reaches 0 they'll also disappear. Besides that, Hired Gun is your basic standard over-the-top fast-paced action first-person shooter with a lot of gore. You'll have your standard generic health bar, a blue shield bar which does exactly what you think it does, there's grenades and medpacks and special abilities your characters can use. Now when you get close to standard human enemies, you'll also be able to perform a execution on them, which comes in handy when you're wanting to take out a pesky flyer or a psycho enemy. Your character can upgrade and learn new abilities. Now for example, one ability which lasts roughly 4 to 5 seconds basically turns him or her into Soldier 76 from Overwatch, making all hits you land critical hits. You can also fire energy from your arms, go into a slow-mo mode like in Fear, and more. There are so many abilities here that there's something that will match your playstyle, and some abilities you won't even bother unlocking or using. Now, unlike Doom, you won't be able to have all your weapons at once. You need to have a loadout which consists of 2 main weapons and 3 sidearms. Now each level will generally end in a boss fight or surviving multiple waves of enemies, and at the end of each level you will have a summary screen showing you what loot you had found in each level. You'll get loot from defeating enemies, but also by opening up treasure chests in each level. Now from here you'll decide on what you want to keep and equip and what you immediately want to sell for money. Now this mechanic at first took me a bit of time to get used to, as the game doesn't really tell you what you're doing, but once you're finished and the screen pops up and warns you that whatever you don't keep will be sold, you start to figure it out. Between missions you'll return to a little safe haven town which can best be described as the Continental from John Wick, because it's a neutral zone and there's no killing allowed. Here you'll be able to go out on main missions or side missions which will reward you with money for your upgrades and weapons, or you'll be able to further equip and upgrade your existing weapons, purchase new weapons, upgrade yourself, or upgrade your mastiff. Now as your character is enhanced with human cybernetic implants, you can upgrade your character like the grappling hook line. Now when you first unlock this ability you'll only have 2 charges and they'll take about a second or 2 to recharge. However, as you expect, as you upgrade this ability, you'll go from 2 charges, say, to 4 charges, and they'll recharge nearly instantly. You'll also be able to unlock new perks and abilities like the aforementioned slowing down time, the Soldier 76 ability, or shooting energy blasts from your hands. Now, as already mentioned, you'll be able to turn your mastiff from a good boy or good girl into the stuff of fucking nightmares. Now, you can upgrade their health for certain portions of their body. Their attack speed and damage can be upgraded or shorten the cooldown length between summoning the mastiff. You'll be able to remove their jaws and eyes and replace them with iron teeth, robotic limbs, and even replace their spine with steel. And yes, you can pet your dog at any time within the safe town. There's also a gladiator arena where you can test out your weapons against enemies, which is basically like the dungeon area in the Fortress of Doom from Doom Eternal. Now there are a load of different enemy variants in Hired Gun with standard Hired Goons.
Hired Goons?
Enemy mastiffs, heavy units with jump packs with crude power hammers, mech units which remind me a lot of the orc power suits, psychers, human ogres, and standard boss fights, which of course like you'd expect are at the end of each level. There are also some decent chunks of missions where you have simple yet fresh platforming sections which break up the repetitive but fun nature of the combat. Hired Gun, however, does have its fair share of technical issues and head-scratching moments for a Warhammer fan. First things first, there are some graphical pop-ins that are pretty noticeable. Some areas like the lighting effects and weapon models look pretty good if you ask me, but some areas are as rough as the office after Michael Scott leaves the show.
Here's your stupid office!
He does not like that wall.
Graffiti on the wall changes and disappears, and I highly doubt it's projected future graffiti. The executions look like crap, and you can do them to any enemy unless they're the giant baby ogre looking things, mech warriors, or a boss fight. You basically just need to go up to an unexpected enemy and hit the relevant button, and if they see you and they're shooting at you, you can just zip over to them with a grappling hook and do the same thing. There's been executions done too over the side of a building, and both character models are just floating there on nothing. I found a bug too that any time I called my mastiff, as soon as I aimed with a weapon that had a scope, the scope would stay black until I zoomed out and then back in. At the start of every mission, the level itself would load and then immediately go back to the loading screen with press E to proceed. When you start each level, you can decide what loadout you want to take with you. Now you can have 2 primary weapons, which can be standard shotguns, assault rifles, or special weapons like a sniper rifle or a plasma gun, or heavy weapons like a heavy bolter. Then you can have 3 sidearms. Now personally, I think it should be 2 sidearms and 3 main weapons. On top of that, there is a revolver that you start the game with that you cannot remove from your inventory or equipped weapons, and there is a legendary version of that pistol too. So if you have the better, upgraded version of the starter pistol, you cannot replace the starter revolver with the legendary equivalent of that revolver, which means if you want to use the legendary pistol, you're taking 2 versions of the same gun, and yes, this can be patched out, but it's a awful mechanic. Strangely enough too, if you find a treasure chest throughout a mission, you can obviously pick them up and they'll be at your loot screen at the end of the mission, and you can further equip 1 additional primary weapon if you find it during a mission. It's not really a negative, but it's a strange setup. Now sometimes I found myself scratching my head as to why I can't start missions with 3 main weapons, and at other times I was thankful that I'd found a treasure chest with a heavy weapon or a special weapon inside of it because I was dealing loads of damage. Now about halfway through the campaign there's a mission where you'll go up against Gene Stealers. Now if you don't know what those are, they're basically xenomorphs from the Alien franchise. These things are dangerous as fuck, and they can take down space marines, tanks, and armies like nobody's business. Now you'll go up against them in the campaign and they're frightening. Now honestly, if my microphone was turned on, you could probably hear me shit myself on multiple occasions. Now in the tabletop though, one human, even with cybernetic enhancements, isn't going to survive against one, let alone 3 or 4 gene stealers at once. Now also in the campaign you'll see gene stealers fight along gangsters against you. Now from memory I think the only faction that work alongside Tyranids in the tabletop is gene stealer cults, and they're not standing next to them in this game. Speaking of campaign though, that's probably the biggest problem I had with Hired Gun. The story and the delivery is so boring I honestly couldn't be bothered even trying to keep up with it. There are characters in cutscenes and missions where you need to retrieve things that I honestly couldn't care for. Now one of the main reasons I couldn't care for the story is the delivery and the tediousness of how you need to go about it. Basically, to start a main story mission, you need to start talking to the relevant character in the safe zone Shantytown. Pretty straightforward, right? But you'll need to go to talk to person A. Then he or she will tell you to go talk to person B, who you'll have to go walk to, and then they'll tell you to go walk to person C, who is on the other side of the safe zone. Now sure, the area isn't huge and you can jump and zip around the area, but having to daisy chain between 3 NPCs so that you can get your next main story mission is just boring and not necessary.
Necessary? Is it necessary for me to drink my own urine? Probably not. No, but I do it anyway because it's sterile and I like the taste.
I'd rather just have a single cutscene explaining things rather than go and talk to lifeless characters that I couldn't care for. Speaking of lifeless, some character models look like crap.
Yeah, like crap.
There are dead bodies that clip through beds, there's bullet damage when shooting an ogre-like enemy, their character models look like that you've been throwing tomatoes at them. Fuck, there is one level early on in the campaign that is inside a junkyard, and I'm not joking. The start of the mission and the opening area looks like an entire giant copy and paste with wall and texture models.
Wow, it must be expensive to produce all these cartoons.
Well, we cut corners. Sometimes to save money, our animators will reuse the same backgrounds over and over and over again.
Now most of the characters as well have their mouths covered, so when they talk, you don't actually have to animate their mouths are moving. Having said that, I think one of the main problems or hindrances with the game Hired Gun is that it would have made a good sleeper hit release, but personally I found some of the marketing for the game made it look like a AAA title. I had fun playing Hired Gun, and I think there's a bit of replayability, being able to replay story missions to find hidden treasure and legendary weapons. Now you can also go after bounties and accept side missions which pay off some decent rewards as well. Now during combat, random metal music will play and it's actually not bad. Is it as good as Mick Gordon in Doom? No, but it's better than the replacement metal that what we got in the Doom Eternal DLC. During the level when you go up against Gene Stealers, there's music that's very reminiscent of John Carpenter's The Thing. I'd actually comfortably own the score for Hired Gun on vinyl because I think it's decent background metal music and good for this game. Now if you're not aware, you're probably already too late, but a couple of weeks ago I did a review on Warhammer 40k Space Marine and I was doing a giveaway with my good friends Dom and Oz at Incognito Comics. We were giving away a copy of Warhammer 40k Marnius Calgar, which is a great comic book, and a Warhammer 40k Recruiter starter set. All you needed to do was subscribe to the channel, follow Incognito Comics on Facebook, and comment on the Space Marine video what your fan-made Space Marine faction would be called and what their colour scheme would be, and the winner is on screen right now. Congratulations and thank you to everyone who's entered, and don't worry, I'll be doing another giveaway very soon, and when I say very soon, trust me, it's soon. Is Hired Gun though a perfect video game? No! There are issues with it that bring it down a bit, but is it a bad video game? I wouldn't say so either. It's perfectly fine, and as a Warhammer fan, there's a bit of fun here to be had. Now if you enjoy titles like Doom and Titanfall and Borderlands and you're a Warhammer fan, then you'll probably enjoy yourself. If you're not a Warhammer fan, then Hired Gun is a mindless first-person shooter with a confusing and poor story, but it's got entertaining combat, and that's the main thing about these games. It's not as polished as Doom Eternal in any means, and the executions look rougher than the original design for Sonic in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, but it's still a bit of fun. If you're a fan of fast-paced first-person action shooters, you should look at Necromunda Hired Gun at some point. whether it's now because you've got nothing to play, or when a Steam sale comes along. Warhammer Necromunda Hired Gun is available now.